Hello, my friends. Rob Roselli coming to you once again on the Not Fox News Network. Today being Thursday, April the 20th, 2017. And again, the website boxofsunglasses.com. That's one word. Twitter at Rob Roselli. Email info at boxofsunglasses.com. And just to go through the books real quickly, pleased to meet you. Okay. These are available on Amazon. The Un-American Genocidal Complex, or the Deep State, as we like to call it. Remember the Georgia Guidestones, Skull and Bones, the American Illuminati, the 322. We went through that in the last show. And all the previous videos are posted on, if you go to the site boxofsunglasses.com and the YouTube channel, all the previous videos are posted there. So the last several videos would have been April 13th, maybe April 11th. Last week we started going through Matthew 24, but you can read the descriptions and we go through all this. And the United Nations, of course, is the controlling government. That's kind of the nexus of this whole thing. And of course the United Nations, along with the New York Federal Reserve Bank and St. John's the Divine Cathedral, which we'll get to in a second, combined conspired to make New York City the #1 candidate for the Mystery Babylon of Revelation. And speaking of which, just to take a little side note before we get back to Matthew 24, current events are unfolding in exactly the way the proper interpretation of Revelation 17 and 18, and that's spelled out on my site. So if you go, again, boxofsunglasses.com, Mystery Babylon USA, you can read about basically current events. That's a calamitous economic collapse and a nuclear ambush of these United States, followed by the Battle of Armageddon over there in the Middle East. It's the basic sequence of events. Okay, and that's the way things are unfolding. So in other words, if you're waiting for some stupid comic book Antichrist and some rebuilt Jerusalem temple, chances are it's not going to happen. And if it does, you need not worry about it. If you're in the United States, we got much, much bigger problems. Okay. That being, we are the Mystery Babylon of Revelation 17. So, be that as it may, the first book available as a PDF, okay, on the site. They Live, Great Society of the Undead. Again, your Federal Reserve note on this economy, this fake economy, this illusion of the United States economy, this debt-based economy that's about to implode on itself. Okay, we've been living in this debt-based economy with our sellout politicians borrowing from the Federal Reserve System, the devil worshippers, okay, the devil worshippers, the all-seeing eye of Osiris, the main deity of ancient Egypt, or Apollo, the Greek Apollo or Apollyon of Revelation 9. Very quickly to see we're run by world and a nation run by a bunch of devil worshippers, so, which is the point of the whole Bible. But so right there, so the economy is about to implode. There's your economic collapse. And then as we're seeing right now, again, today being April the 20th, 2017, I mean, the Russians are poking away up there in Alaska. The Chinese are moving in. Iran, North Korea. We're surrounded. Okay, the so-called exceptional people who are mired down in these useless wars in Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq are picking a fight with Russia, North Korea, Iran. It's textbook insanity. Okay, even Trump, this eye of the storm Trump, is looking to be more and more like a neocon, another neocon maniac. Maybe he's got something up his sleeve, I don't know, but I doubt it. Okay, somebody probably got to him and told him, we're going to JFK you if you don't do what we say, or who knows what's going on. But that window of time that I thought we'd have a little bit more of, it looks like it's rapidly closing. And around Trump, which means it's closing around basically Bible-believing Christian America, or what's left of it. And again, I'm not talking about these bozos on a Trinity Broadcasting Network. But anyway, keep an eye on this pyramid. That's St. John's the Divine Cathedral right there on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Okay, JP Morgan, Capless Pyramid. Okay, dedication to Robert Christian, or R.C. Christian, and we'll get to that in a second, which will kind of rebuild, go over the foundation for Matthew 24 from an angle I'm sure many, if you are listening, have never heard before. Okay, And again, the last several shows discussed this, but we'll continue. Let's go over a brief overview of the last several shows, but just keep this in mind. Okay, and again, boxofsunglasses.com is where you can get the books. But just to go through again, the three basic principles, okay, that are at play here. Number one is the Bible is the center of everything, certainly the core, the quote conspiracy. And either take it as infallible or not. It's an all or nothing proposition. There's no theological evolution. There's no, Pope Francis, whatever this clown's name is, with his fish out of Dagon and his obelisk, his phallus of Osiris, this sitting there, the Cleopatra's needle sitting there in St. Peter's Square that he stares at, which is the same thing basically as the Washington Monument, the 6,660-inch tall phallus of Osiris sitting right there in Washington, D.C., called the Washington Monument, facing the female, or the womb of the Congressional Building, with the goddess, I think it's Minerva, on top of the womb, or Columbia, District of Columbia. Okay, Columbia is another name for the female goddess or female consort of Osiris, or Isis. Okay, so you got the male plus the female, the rose plus the cross, the Rosicrucians, Robert Christian, the Georgia Guidestones, 18th degree of Freemasonry. Okay, it goes much, much deeper than that. We'll get to that in a second. But anyway, everything's aligning. Okay, everything's aligning right now. But be that as it may, let's just backtrack. It's the number one principle. Again, the Bible is the core, the quote conspiracy. Okay, and everything that I just described is covered in there. We're going to continue as much as we can on Matthew 24. Number two is, as I've just stated, there's no doubt that the United States is the mystery Babylon of Revelation, without a doubt. Okay, there's no questioning that. I know there's a lot of people disagree with that, and that's fine. But like I said, unfortunately, it looks like the proper interpretation of events, the non-literal interpretation of events, especially end-time events, is what's unfolding right now. Okay. And there's not a lot of time to catch up, okay? And I'm not a survival gear person. I don't sell it. There's no links to it, okay? Should you be prepared? Yeah, there's a certain amount of preparedness, but at the end of the day, if the entire world, or most of the world, the United States is nuked, the United States is going to throw out a few nukes. There's not much that's going to be left. I mean, I don't get, buying gold and all this other stuff, and years of food supply and gardens and all this. And how are you going to grow? How's a garden going to grow in a whole nuclear fallout all over the world? But so again, just the most important thing to get out of this, okay, is God's simple salvation plan. Boxofsunglasses.com. It's there. There's nothing else. There's no charge. I'm not looking for donations. Purchases of the book are appreciated, so buying that supports me, so at least you're getting a product. But be that as it may, so that, again, number one, Bible. Number two, United States is mystery Babylon. Excuse me. Oh, and number three is Israel's not the God's chosen people. Okay, that's just the wrong interpretation. These biblical literalists and these Israel first people do not know what the blank they're talking about. It's terrible theology. Okay, it's horrendous. Okay, we talked about Matthew 23 quite a bit in the lead up to Matthew 24, and basically Jesus condemns the Pharisees who would convince Jerusalem at large to side with them, and who the Pharisees side with, but Judas Iscariot, okay, who had been indwelt by Satan himself. So you have the Pharisees, God's chosen people, choosing Judas/Satan over Jesus, and then the entire population of Jerusalem turned on Jesus. That's the whole trial, Pontius Pilate, and all that. So, that's kind of swirling around this conversation on Matthew 23 now. They're very interesting. Let's just go through the review real quick. And I remember we talked about stone temples, the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. Jesus had just told the Jews at the end of Matthew 23, your house is left to you desolate, okay, which is their temple. Okay, it's basically what he's saying. And that right there, then who filled that void when he left? The owners, the Pharisees and their sidekicks, the money changers, made a deal with Satan. So your house is left to you desolate. So who filled that void, that desolation? But followers of Satan himself. To me, that's your abomination of desolation right there. Okay, I can't think of anything that's more of an abomination than rejecting Jesus and, basically simultaneously accepting Judas / Satan. Okay, and just as a sidebar, the language of Daniel, the end of Daniel lines up with this. Okay, the 70 weeks and all that, and perhaps on a future show we can go through that. But the key is, again, if you take this stuff literally, then there might be a literal interpretation. Okay, I don't claim to be a Middle East scholar, but if there is one, and I'm not sure that there is, it's mostly symbolic. There's something much bigger going on than the literal interpretations of the Bible. Okay, and Daniel's 70 weeks is one of those instances. Okay, but the key is, the point is, if you go back to Daniel chapter 9, it talks about many so-called prophecy scholars focus on Daniel 9 and the abomination of desolation, and the Jews have to build their temple so that the Antichrist can go in there and abominate it. It's all nonsense. Okay, it doesn't add up, especially now. You're just saying it. I mean, do you really think that the world's going to stop so that the bozos on Trinity Broadcasting Network can be correct, and that Israel's going to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem, and then the comic book Antichrist is going to walk in there with his robe and his horns and start zapping people, and the two witnesses in Jerusalem? Okay, another woefully misinterpreted aspect of the book of Revelation. Okay, people that think there's going to be two dudes running around Jerusalem zapping people, I don't believe that. Okay, and again, that could be another conversation, not to get off on that, but if you're interested in that concept, I believe it's in the Psalm 73, okay, talks about the two witnesses, okay. I hope I'm getting at the right Psalm, but now that I've mentioned it, let's just check that out real quick, so I don't mislead people, but just not to go off on a tangent on the two witnesses right now, but let's just read through that. Excuse me, I said 73, I meant 79. It's actually Psalm 79 that explains the concept of the two witnesses quite clearly, okay. And again, it's not Moses and Elijah, coming down to earth in parachutes and zapping people for 3.5 years in Jerusalem. It's just not going to go down like that. Okay, besides the fact that that would be a serious sign. Okay, it goes against so much scripture that I don't want to get into it and get knocked off base right now going into that. But it's just suffice it to say right now, if you're sitting around waiting for a rebuilt temple in Jerusalem, two dudes to come down in parachutes from heaven and start zapping people for 3.5 years so their bodies, it's not the way it goes down. And you can read about it in Psalm 79 if you're really that curious right now. It's not a literal event. Okay, it's just not the way it is. Be that as it may, let's just go back to Matthew 24, and I'll try and. It gets very difficult to stay on point here, and I'll do my best to maintain the continuity of the conversation. But as you can see, it's very difficult. And by the way, ironically enough, but this is why interpreting Revelation is so difficult. First of all, think about writing it. Okay, you're John. You're coming from this four-dimensional world, 3 space and 1 time, and you're trying to describe events in heaven, which is outside of these 4 dimensions that we live in. That's part of the problem. Okay, a lot of these events overlap, and a lot of them are happening concurrently. Okay, and I'll just go back to Daniel's 70 weeks real quick. I believe those events overlap. Okay. Because any other interpretation, if you take the linear interpretation that's so popular, it's just things stop adding up. Okay. Again, it's just you can't take the Bible literally. All right. And if you do, for example, in the end of John's Gospel, I believe it's John 22, when they catch the 153 fish, it's the best example. There's so much interpretation that can be done on that number alone. But did they catch 153 fish? Sure. Okay. Is that the point of the parable? Absolutely not. Okay, there's so much going on there, based on the breakdown of that number and what that symbolized, and and all this other sort of thing that ties in with the rest of prophecy and Jesus arising on the third day, which happens to be the 8th day or the first day of the new week. Okay, and this sort of thing. But that's the point. Okay, is that you cannot take this stuff literally, and if you do, if there is a literal manifestation, it's minor in consequence compared to the much bigger picture, the symbolic or spiritual picture behind it. Okay, now just to review real quickly in Matthew, this is an example right here. We'll just roll right into our review of Matthew 24. Remember, at the end of Matthew 23, Jesus, woe unto you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites. You're full of your whitewashed tombs full of dead men's bones. You're condemned to hell. And he says, your house is left unto you desolate, talking to Jerusalem as a whole. And ye shall not see me again till you say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. Now, that's obviously the second coming, okay? And that rolls right into what Jesus is talking about here. And Jesus says there shall not be one stone left upon another. Now, again, this is another example of what I was just talking about. Okay, there's a literal interpretation, which is the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, Herod's temple in Jerusalem in 70 A.D., okay, which is a big deal. Well, I'm not saying it's not a big deal, especially for the Jews that were in there holed up and holding off against the Roman legions that had come down to rout them out. I mean, they basically all killed themselves, I think, except for two guys, a Jewish historian, Josephus, and another guy. I think I don't want to go off on Josephus right now, but anyway, most of the people killed themselves is the point, okay? But it was a horrible event. That being said, there's a much bigger symbolic meaning behind the destruction of the temple, because look what what we said, the first question that after Jesus tells them this, the disciple said, what shall be your sign of your coming? Well, obviously the second coming, because he's right in front of him right there. So, and what shall be the sign of the end of the world? So obviously Jesus' interpretation, the bigger interpretation of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem, was the destruction of the world. Now, what temple is he talking about? Now, we talked about this real quickly. Well, we did talk about this in depth, but I'll talk about this real quickly. Now, and this is Morals and Dogma, okay, Albert Pike, okay, and we went through this, and we talked about his ashlar cube, and Albert Pike was a high-level Freemason, because when a Freemason's talking about building a stone temple, they're talking about actually, symbolically, the ashlar cube, which we went through the numbers, okay, what comes out of the ashlar cube, the 3 plus the 7 plus the 12, we talked about this last week, but the 322 of skull and bones, okay, the anti-Ten Commandments, or the Georgia Guidestones, the United Nations. So you can see how this stuff all kind of connects, okay, and it's only going to get better. We'll talk about these temples for a couple minutes here, because this is very big, okay, and it's impending, okay, it's coming up. This within the next year, let's say. I'm not a date setter, but things are rapidly spinning out of control. So we talk about the perfect society. He called the perfect ashlar cubical stone, the symbol of perfection, is the state. In other words, the fascist liberals, the neocons, the deep state, whatever you want to call it, that runs the world, which wants its order out of chaos, which wants to screen or get rid of 90% of the world's population. Okay. To rebuild its ashlar cube, or its perfect world state, under their god Lucifer. Okay, how are they going to do it? Well, you're going to have this insane. You start a war. Okay, we talked about the un-American genocidal complex. We talked about World War I, World War II, all started by the bankers. The deployment of the AIDS virus via the smallpox vaccine. That's good for a few 100 million deaths, but that's child's play, okay, when you want to get rid of 6 billion people. So what do? You start a nuclear war over nonsense, which is the insane path. If you think about it, we're on the precipice of nuclear war. For what? Why? Because we're run by a bunch of devil-worshipping, blinded by the devil, genocidal psychopaths. There's a simple answer, okay? There's nothing else that makes sense. Okay, so this temple, again, this temple that they're trying to build, the Freemason Illuminatis that are running the world, is the temple that Jesus is talking about. Okay, now, remember, It's very interesting. Now, in this U.S. News and World Report, again, there's your all-seeing eye of Apollo, Osiris, or Polyon from Revelation 9. Okay, remember we talked about this. Okay, there's another example of the invisible college of the Rosicrucians, the rose plus the cross. Okay, the male plus the female, Osiris plus Isis. Okay, the 18th or 6 plus 6 plus 6 degree of Freemasonry. Then here you have this little, baby Lucifer flying around up here above the invisible college. Remember, the invisible college / Rosicrucians were descended from the Knights Templar, amongst other groups. Okay, and they serve as kind of a nexus for modern day Freemasons / Illuminati, and also serve as the basis of the British Roundtable groups, which leads right back into your Council on Foreign Relations, your Bilderberg Group, your Skull and Bones, or what I call the Un-American Genocidal Complex, or what people are now calling, I guess the latest catchphrase is the Deep State, but whatever it is. This is it right here. There's their temple, okay? Baby Lucifer flying around, the old, the hand of Providence, okay, guiding the whole thing along. All right. What do we see here? 16, 18, 1.618, the golden ratio. Okay, remember we've talked about this, but basically if you take the base of the Great Pyramid and you set the hypotenuse to 1, this is the Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay, not only do you get a numerical pi over 4 in the vertical, but you get the golden ratio 0.618 and the horizontal. Okay, that's setting the hypotenuse to 1.0. Okay, and I go through this, and I'm just briefly going through probably 20-30 page PDF in about 30 seconds here. But if you go on to the Robert Christian page, okay, you can read all about it at the bottom, about the Egyptian pyramid, okay, the Great Pyramid of Giza. And I'm not going to go off on a whole discussion of the pyramids around the world, the Mayans and the Aztecs. Look, you can go to, Ancient Aliens, this kind of thing, or Steve Quayle, okay, who does some great work on a lot of this stuff. Okay, SteveQuayle.com. I don't know Steve Quayle, and he doesn't know me. But anyway, I have no interest, but I'm just saying if you're really into that kind of thing, which has its place, that's where you can read a lot more on that. But I basically focus on the Great Pyramid of Giza because that's the focus of the Old Testament, the book of Exodus, Moses versus Pharaoh, and all this sort of thing. Okay, so that's again, that's what's at play here, and it's the beginning of Matthew 24. But again, notice 1.618, with baby Lucifer flying right above it. Okay, and what else do we get? Okay, the Economist magazine. This is the Rothschild Economist magazine, by the way, the Rothschilds, who basically sit at the top of the pyramid that I just showed you. Okay, the devil-worshipping Rothschild family, who basically cultivated your Rockefellers, your Morgans, your Carnegies, your Vanderbilts. In other words, the American deep state. Okay, those behind the Skull and Bones, the Federal Reserve System, and all that. But so you got the Rothschild magazine, and what do you see on the front of it here? But the golden ratio, or phi. See this right here? The symbol phi. 0.618. Okay, which is the inverse of 1.618. Okay, which is the base of a triangle formed by the Great Pyramid, by taking, again, half the Great Pyramid, the hypotenuse set to 1, the vertical is pi over 4, the base of that triangle becomes 0.618 of the golden ratio. Okay, so now hopefully this picture's starting to develop, okay, about what temple Jesus is really talking about here. He's talking about this temple, this symbolic temple of this world state that Albert Pike and the rest of his Freemason Illuminati genocidal psychopaths are trying to build. Okay, that's really what Jesus was talking about here in Matthew 24. Okay, again, not some stupid, nonsense temple, some comic book, interpretation of these events that you hear on these so-called prophecy experts that have no idea what the hell they're talking about. They just ignore all of this. They ignore all of it just to put Israel, the national Israel, up on some kind of pedestal. Okay, I don't listen to these people. Okay, they don't know what they're talking about. It's terrible. They're con men. They're swindlers. I don't know what they're stupid. I don't know, but it's not a lot of time here to figure this out. This is where the action is. Okay. Economist magazine, 1988. Rothschild. golden ratio phi. Now, another interesting about phi is think about 0.618. What's inherent in that number? Well, 18, 6 times 3. 3 sixes, you get 18. Okay. So where else do we see that number come up? You know, just kind of trying to keep it tight to the temple. Now, of course, you have Revelation 13:8 to count or calculate the number of the beast, 603 score and 6. It doesn't say, you know, the number is the number of a man, which would be Albert Christian or Satan in the flesh, Judas Iscariot, or whoever Satan just happens to have taken over. Okay, and there's many people, I believe, throughout history that fit that bill, like Pharaoh Barry, okay, 44th President of the United States in honor of the god of 44, Horus, okay, who represents the offspring of Isis and Osiris. I don't know if I'll go on that one right now, but you can read several pages of PDFs on the bottom of the opening on my website about Pharaoh Barry and all the numerical connections to him. The image of the beast, okay, not the comic book Antichrist, okay. But anyway, just getting back to this golden ratio, 0.618 or 18 over 6 or 3 sixes. What do you have here? You have this so-called Star of David, which is not the Star of David, it's the Seal of Solomon. And I love these bozos, again, getting back to some of these so-called Christians with their stupid, you know, singing their Jewish songs and wearing their yarmulkes and, you know, send money to me so I can send it to Israel. There's your Jewish star, okay, 6 points, 3 up, 3 down, rising sun in the east, okay, symbolic of the sun god Osiris or Apollo, okay, 6 triangles, 6 points, 6 figures, okay. There's your 666 right there, okay, as above, so below, okay. This is what they're saying. This is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. This is the Bible, no pun intended, of the New Age movement, of one of them, okay. The Hermetic Order, as in Hermes, okay, the Greek god Hermes, or the Egyptian god Thoth, the god of wisdom, okay, who equates to basically Horus, or the god of wisdom, who sounds a lot like the biblical Satan, because that's exactly what he is, okay. But again, 3 sixes right here in your face, okay. It just doesn't get any more obvious, but this one is huge. Just getting back to this real quick, because just, you know, this is 30 years ago. Okay, if you had 30 to 1988, the printing of this, you come up with 2018. Okay, now 30 is a significant number because it represents, I think it's Luke chapter 4, that Jesus started his ministry, and as we covered on the show and in those other links, okay, when did Barack Obama, when did the so-called healthcare bill, the Rosicrucian healthcare bill, come into being? But 30 years to the date of these things, March 22nd, 1980. Okay, 322, March 22nd. Okay, this stuff starting to add up. So 30 is a very significant number with these psychopaths, as are all numbers. But be that as it may, if you add 30 to 1988, you come up to 2018. Now, it's very interesting because 2018, if the Freemasons regard 4000 BC as year 0, 4000 BC is the year 0, so if you take 2018, what do you come up with? The year 6018, or 6.18. Okay. It's very, very interesting. Okay. This stuff's not a coincidence. They're basically, and there's a 2018. See that there 2018 right here. Okay. So 6, 0. Zeros are placeholders in numerology. 618.618. Exactly 400 years to the date, by the way, of getting back to this thing right here. 1618. 1.618. Remember, we went through the one of the many lives of the mythical Robert Christian, who, by the way, is the real basis for Count Dracula, which is very interesting. Okay, Saint Germain or Robert Christian or Christian Rose Cross, and I got a whole section on vampires. If you go to the Robert Christian link on my site, and I think it's page 5 or whatever page it is, you can read all about that. But just an interesting sidebar there. But so just whether this person, Robert Christian of Saint Germain, existed in history is up in the air, but he has an awful lot of characteristics that overlap almost perfectly with the way Satan is described throughout the Bible. Okay, but so you got 1.618 is the year 1618, and we went through that. Okay, the golden ratio. So 400 years to the date aligns with this front page of the devil-worshipping Rothschild family. 30 plus 1988 gets us to 0.618, exactly 400 years. Okay, now 4 is very significant, and 4 is symbolic of the 4 points of the cross, or the female, or Isis. Okay, I don't feel that may sound like, crazy conspiracy theory, but if somebody has a better explanation as to why they would put 0.618, representative, phi, okay, representative of 3 6s, or 6 plus 6 plus 6, leading up to 18, or the golden ratio, or the Great Pyramid, as I've been discussing, all ears. Okay, so in other words, we're going to have this economic chaos. Then you got the phoenix rising out of the ashes. So in other words, you got this burning, this destruction of the United States economy, which was a mathematical certainty from the day the Federal Reserve Act was signed, and the phoenix rising out of the ashes. This is your order out of chaos. Okay, this is representative of your, for example, your Greek god Pan, or Dionysus, or Bacchus, the god of revelry, wine, partying, sexual immorality. Okay, just Pan, or pandemonium, or chaos. Okay, but also the giver of life, just like the Indian god Shiva, destruction, and the giver of life, destruction, nuclear war. Psychopaths running the Pentagon in DC right now, starting a nuclear war, getting rid of billions of people. Humanity is 500 million people, brought to us by these guys and Robert Christian, the 18th degree of Freemasonry. Leads us right back to this phoenix rising out of the ashes. So hopefully you're starting to understand, this God of the Bible. If you don't quite get why, why he did what he did, say in the Old Testament, say in the book of Exodus, killing the firstborn in Egypt. That's pretty drastic. Killing all their cattle. The angel of the Lord going through and killing everybody that night of the Passover, which happens to align with the 14, or the Thursday night that Jesus was crucified. It's an exact replication, by the way, that whole story of Exodus, and we can go through that at some future date. But right, let's just stick to the point. I mean, it seems pretty drastic, but when you start to hopefully start to digest what I'm saying here, the psychopaths around the world are pushing us to the brink of nuclear war to get rid of 6 billion or 6.5 billion out of 7 billion people. These are not people that you can deal with. Okay, what is God supposed to do? Okay, but again, this thing in Egypt is a foreshadowing of what's about to happen. Has this discussion on the stone temple, and I went a little bit long-winded there, but it's very important that's established. Okay, because this is happening. Okay, and again, you're not going to get some stupid 7-year tribulation period with a pre-trib. I can't know nonsense about a pre-trib and a post-trib rapture. If you're listening right now and you're a believer, or hopefully soon to be, it's going to suck. All right? It's going to suck. I can't, there's no denying that. All right? You're not going to be sitting, you're not going to get raptured out of here just in time before, well, Israel sits there, with their 2 witnesses, and 7 years later they're going to get raptured, and it's all going to be a big party, and, Satan and his devils are going to get thrown to a lake of fire and burn in hell forever. That's not how it's going to go down. Okay? But speaking of tribulation, that's kind of where we ended up last week on verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this day, nor ever shall be. So in other words, that's the wrath of God. Okay? And once that hits, that's it. All right? There's no turning back. It's too late. Okay? Remember, the 6th seal, the great day of the wrath of the Lamb has come, begging for the mountains to fall on us, for the great day of his wrath has come, and where shall we hide? Who shall hide us from the wrath of the Lamb? And I'm paraphrasing, but that's the 6th seal, so they know. So when Jesus says at the end of Matthew 23, you shall not see me again And when you see me again, you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. That's what he's referring to. It's like people are going to be like, all right, but it's too late. Okay, remember Matthew 12. Okay, Jesus says, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign, but no sign shall be given to it except for the sign of the prophet Jonah. So in other words, a warning. And that's it. And then utter destruction. Okay, there's nothing else. There's nothing else to interpret. Okay, don't make this more complicated than it is, but that's what Jesus is talking about there. And just to kind of confirm that, let's just go to 2 Thessalonians real quick. 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. Okay, let's read through this real quick and just find the right verses here. This is verse 4. So that we ourselves glory in the churches of God for your patience and faith in all your persecutions and tribulations that ye endure. So in other words, Christians have been dealing with a great tribulation since really the death of Christ. Okay, and to me it's really disrespectful, and it really belittles the sacrifices that these people made, much more than Christians here in America, myself included, are making. Much easier right now to be a Christian in America than be a Christian in, say, in Rome, or the Apostle Paul in Jerusalem. Okay, so they had tribulation, and not to mention, all the groups throughout the medieval times that were burned at the stake from the so-called Christian Catholic Church. Okay, the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people martyred by them and throughout the world, and as is happening right now. Okay, so people are experiencing tribulation right now. So there's not going to be a special great tribulation, for John Hagee and his mega church to experience. Okay, just because I guess they're better than everybody else. These other tribulation that these people experience doesn't matter. It's nonsense. Okay, so there's a tribulation there, but then, which is a manifest token of the righteous judgment of God, that you may count to be worthy of the kingdom of God, for which you also suffer. So you're going to be suffering, okay? Seeing it is a righteous thing with God to recompense tribulation to them that trouble you. So in other words, this is God's tribulation back to the people that persecute the church of God. There is a time that's the same tribulation that Jesus is talking about. So this greatest tribulation that you'll never see. It never happened before. It'll never happen again. He's referring about the wrath of God. Okay, the vengeance. And to you who are troubled, rest with us when the Lord Jesus shall be revealed from heaven with his mighty angels again. Okay, remember the disciples just asked him, what shall be the sign of your coming? And Jesus was standing right in front of them. So they're obviously talking about the second coming, or this event that Paul's talking about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1. In flaming fire, taking vengeance on them that know not God, and that obey not the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ, who shall be punished with everlasting destruction from the presence of the Lord and from the glory of his power. Okay, and we talked about that on past shows. Okay, just what he's talking about there. He's talking about hell. Okay, so you're gonna have this wrath of God, sixth seal. Okay, and people are gonna know that God exists and that he's real. All these atheists, all these American Civil Liberties Union scumbags, the evolutionists. Okay, I guess we must pray for these people because what we know is coming. But be that as it may, I mean, there's going to be, I believe, a 5-month just hell on earth event. Okay, and that's Revelation 9. I think it's a figurative number to 5 months. Same, just so happens to be the same amount of months as the flood of Noah. From the 17th day of the second month to the 17th day of the 7th month. Just so happens to be a 5-month period. But be that as it may, people are going to be tortured for 5 months by the king that they asked for, which is Apollo or Apollyon, from the king of the bottomless pit. Okay, and then you're going to have wrath of God. And I'm not exactly sure what the details are of that, and I'm not sure I really want to know, and I'm not sure it's important to know. Just the important thing is that one of two things should happen if you're a true Christian believer. Is either you should have been martyred by them or killed by the deep state United Nations world government, just like, Stephen, the first martyr in Acts chapter 7, the Apostle Paul himself later on, and all the disciples and all these other kinds of people. James, I think it was in Acts chapter 13, had his head chopped off. But either that, or at the very end, there will be a rapture, and we'll get into that here in a second in Matthew 24. But that's at the very end, and it's going to happen quick. So 1 Thessalonians, I think it's chapter 15, Paul goes into that, but it's been way, way overinterpreted and overused. Okay, we're going to get back to that language, but the point is, if you're not part of one of those two groups, or if you've been forgiven by God for not having knowledge, if you're living out in the middle of Australia and Australian outback, and those people are covered in Romans chapter 2, okay, but we're not worried about them, okay. We're worried if you're listening right now, okay, because you're going to be judged according to the knowledge that you have, because you have very little knowledge. This is Luke 12:47 and 12:48. If you have a lot of knowledge and you misuse it, or you don't use it, you don't warn people, Ezekiel 33, the watchman, okay, you're in deep doo-doo, okay. If you're living in America and you're the beneficiary of the Christian foundation of what was the greatest nation in the history of the world, and you're running around now and you're an atheist or an abortionist, murdering scumbag, you got hell to pay, literally, okay. And don't forget, just real quickly, what hell really is, okay. You're going to have this 5 months, just hell on earth, and then that's going to be it. God, who is the source of all light and power, is going to forget you. That's at the end of Jeremiah, the last couple of verses of Jeremiah 23. He's going to forget you, but then he goes on to say, your death shall not be forgotten. Your sin shall not be forgotten. So how does that work? If God forgets, God, there's no means of redemption. Okay, time is over. Time's up, literally. There's no more time. Okay. Remember, I think this is Revelation, I think it's 13 or 14, when the seventh angel sounds, and there shall be time no longer. That's it. Okay, so you're in complete darkness, and the only thing you have for infinity is your own thoughts, your own memories, okay, of your life and how it ended, and all this sort of thing. And it's just contemplate that for a minute and think about eternity of just living by yourself in utter darkness. Okay, nobody. It's impossible even to contemplate. Okay, so you don't want to think about that. Okay, what precedes it or what it actually is. Okay, but this is where, like David Rockefeller, who's right in the middle of this whole deep state, passed away a few weeks ago. That's what he's got to look forward to. All right, yeah, he had his 100 years or 102 years of bilking America and the world out of their wealth with the Federal Reserve System. Okay, he probably thinks he's going to reincarnate in his post-chaos world. But I don't want to go off. That's not really the subject of this show. But anyway, that's the important thing to keep in mind here. Okay. So just getting back to Matthew 24. So just in 21, that's kind of where we left off. And that's, I guess, I'm almost short on time here, but then, so that's 21, talking about the tribulation, the real meaning of tribulation again. And then 22, except those days be shortened, there should be no flesh saved, but for the elect's sakes, those days shall be shortened. Okay, so in other words, he's talking about the rapture here. Okay, but that's, again, in other words, what Jesus is saying is things are going to get so out of hand. He's got to come back. He's got to save what's left of humanity. If you listen, I mentioned Steve Quayle before, and some of the stuff he's coming up with, flesh-eating robots, genetically modified organisms, okay, CERN, okay, opening up portals, which sounds a lot like the bottomless pit opening up, which I believe symbolically happened on another plane of existence. But as far as, right now, 2017, okay, this is what Jesus is talking about. Jesus says, I got to come back, and or else it's going to be total insanity. I mean, there are going to be a few believers who I'm going to say, unfortunately, haven't died and are alive to see this just Satan gone wild. Okay, Jesus has to come back, and not only to exact his revenge, as we just read about in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, but to save what's left of humanity, the believers that he plans on saving. Okay, and that's your rapture. In other words, it's at the very end. Okay, it's not going to be some magical train ticket out of here like a lot of these morons, these so-called evangelicals in this country think that it's going to be some kind of free ride. Just hang out and you know, so-and-so's church and you read his stupid books and his nonsense about national Israel, send money to Israel, you know, God's chosen people, and you'll be saved. It's much, much, much worse than that. And then it says, then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not, for there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch if it were possible they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Now again, he's referring to things like ancient aliens, okay, that were here on the earth pre-flood and maybe to an extent post-flood. Okay, all the pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Giza, that wasn't built by Neanderthals that just learned to walk and chew gum. Okay, as I've just said. And talking about the golden ratio with the Great Pyramids, by the way, barely scratching the surface. Okay, so these idiots, these so-called, you know, historians and Egyptologists, whatever they call themselves on the History Channel, saying, well, it was slaves and they, you know, they built all these ramps and all this, you know, it took them years and years to build, and they brought the rocks from, you know, 2, 10, 80-ton stones from 500 miles away and cut them perfectly and with perfect alignments to the stars and measurements that just so happen to be, you know, directly related to the circumference of the Earth and the distance to the sun. Oh yeah, a bunch of Neanderthals that just, you know, just came out of evolution, did all that. I mean, it's so stupid. Okay. But the point is, false Christ showing signs and wonders. Okay, so we're going to have basically it's going to be Atlantis, or the pre-flood world, coming back for a second time. Ancient aliens, all kinds of UFO activity, bad stuff. Okay, it's headed our way. That's what this is saying, signs and wonders. And I believe these signs and wonders have already been shown to many of our elites who have sold out and sworn allegiance to Satan. Remember, Satan took Jesus in Luke 4, flew him around the world and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. So he's still lurking around. And he's gotten to the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers and obviously a lot of those people who, like I said, hopefully are enjoying every bit of their time here on Earth, because once that's up, anyway, there's a lot to get to here. So the days are going to be shortened. We just talked about that. Now, there's the false Christ and false prophets, okay? And just so happens, you know, another source of my research is Lucis Trust, or Lucifer's Publishing Company, which is an organization associated with this thing, and a high-level Freemason by the name of Alice Bailey, okay, who interpreted, had channeled a spirit, a demon spirit, okay. It just so happens to be the main character in this book. I named him after this. You know, there's a real name. There's real names in this book, okay. But anyway, and he called himself the Christ, okay. Now Alice Bailey laughed his stuff off with Lucifer's Publishing Company, or Lucis Trust, still exists at the United Nations. And if you're a taxpayer in the United States, you're paying for this. So it's really not that funny, okay. And many high-level people like David Rockefeller, Robert Mueller, who came up with this insanity called outcome-based education. And if you look at our education system, it's a far cry from its Christian roots of, you know, 100, 200 years ago. It's a cesspool of evolutionary, politically correct, gay rights, cesspool nonsense, okay? Outcome-based education, okay? The results don't matter. Moral relativism, all this other sorts of nonsense, okay? So the guy that invented that spent time at Lucifer's Publishing Company, and I've been there, okay? These people literally pray to the devil. Maybe they don't know it, maybe they don't think they are, but they have their little invocation and a little prayers praying to the great powers of light and these entities, okay, that Alice Bailey, one of the founders of the New Age movement, along with the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the Greek god Hermes, etc., that we talked about a little bit before, okay, identifies himself as a Christ. So that this is the kind of thing that Jesus is referring to here. Okay. So do these entities walk the earth? Does Satan walk the earth? Yeah. 1 Peter 5:8. Judas Iscariot, an example. Okay. So anyway, getting back to this. I've told you beforehand, wherefore, if they say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. He is in the secret chambers, believe it not. So, this is, I believe, is a reference to the Great Pyramid of Giza. Okay, the tomb of Osiris that's in the Great Pyramid of Giza, the empty tomb. Okay, that nobody can figure out. It's not a burial chamber. Okay, the Great Pyramid of Giza, it's like, oh, it's a burial chamber. No, it's not. There's no body was ever found in there. There's just an empty tomb. Okay, in the middle of it, which is this symbolic burial, or maybe the literal, who knows? These things get really bizarre, but of the Osiris. Okay, so that's the desert. Obviously, the Egyptian pyramids in the middle of the desert. Okay, or the secret chambers. Okay, now, where does the skull and bones? Where do they gather? At some place called the Tomb on Yale's campus with secret chambers. Nobody's allowed in there unless you're a member of this group here, the Skull and Bones. Okay, right in the middle of the deep state, so-called. Okay, they go in there and they jump into a coffin, and that's their symbolic being born again. That's what they do with Skull and Bones. One of the many effing weirdos, George Bush and John Kerry and all these other people that run the world. But anyway, jump into a casket, become born again. Who are they becoming born again to? Symbolically, they're God Lucifer. Okay, the casket representing the womb, or Gaia, or Mother Earth, or Isis, or Columbia, or Minerva. Okay, Capitol Dome, Washington D.C., looking right at the 6,660-inch tall phallus of Osiris called the Washington Monument. Okay, they symbolically get into the womb of Isis. Now, just real quickly, I mean, do you think, have they accepted the mark of the beast? Do they need some stupid microchip? Okay, some 666. Yeah, look, again, that might happen at the end here. I don't know. I think events are happening way too quickly. You have to really get a foothold, the microchip and all this other kind of thing. But I don't know. As George Bush, 3 generations of the Bush family, have they accepted the mark of the beast by participating in Skull and Bones and getting into a casket and basically swearing allegiance to Isis, being born of the womb of Mother Earth, or Gaia, or Isis, the whore of Babylon? I submit to you, yes. Maybe they don't have a physical, maybe, who knows? But I'm not going to go there. I don't know enough to go there. It's not worth it to go there. I have enough information as it is. But to me, yeah, they got the mark of the beast. Whether it's a physical or God's just got a mark. You guys are done. But anyway, so we go through that. False Christ, I've told you before, he's in the desert, he's in the secret chambers. Here's interesting: for as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Now that's very interesting language there. Now, of course, cannot be interpreted literally, sure. Okay, so the coming of, everybody's going to see it. There's not going to be any mistake. Okay, now the east symbolizes the sun. Now Jesus, remember John chapter 1, John chapter 8, he described himself as the true light of the world. Okay, so you get the sun coming out of the east. But the west is also a very interesting concept. Okay, so the west represents hell, or the setting sun. Okay, now the legend of so-called Osiris and Apollo is that, Apollo, let's just focus on him for a second, is that every night he settled in the west. The symbolism of the sun setting in the west is Apollo, his death. Okay, and then, of course, every day he rises again in the east. This is the Greek, Egyptian, Babylonian, you name it, Sumerian interpretation of things. And Osiris, okay, who was the god of light and was punished for trying to give light to mankind. Now, does that sound very familiar? We've heard that before. Yeah, Genesis chapter 3. So the west, to get to the point, I'm not going too much into it, the west symbolizes the earth, or hell on earth. Okay. Because remember, this earth is a battleground. Okay, and for God, who lives outside of time, space, it's an area, or it's to be punished. Okay, so in his mind, it's hell. Okay, and again, God's simple salvation plan is your ticket out of it. Okay, the death of Jesus represents the perfect sacrifice. Okay, and that's your ticket out. There's no other way. Okay, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one will come to the Father but by me. John chapter 14. All right, there's nothing else to do. Okay, you can't go to a Catholic church. You can't give $100 and send it over to Israel, or go for your water baptism, or get confession from a priest who could be a pedophile. Okay, how about that? You go for a confession from a guy who just raped small boys, and somehow that's supposed to, you know, get you into heaven. That doesn't work out like that. So anyway, the point is the West, the language, is represents the earth. Okay, because everybody on earth is going to see it. Okay, and if you see it, if you haven't either died as a martyr, like I said, or some fashion, or died a believer, or been raptured out at the very last second, remember that no flesh shall be saved. And it's not. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. Okay, obviously a reference to mass death, massive war. Okay, and that language is reflective of several verses throughout the old, Jeremiah. The exact references right now escape me, but there is references to that. I want to say Jeremiah chapter 7. Okay, has a reference to a valley of Hinnom, I believe it is being so filled with bodies that the vultures are going to be eating away at the bodies. Okay, and in that case, God was talking about the Babylonian captivity, again, in more of a kind of a symbolic fashion, even in the Old Testament, because of course the whole valley wasn't filled with bodies, but that was the visual he was trying to present. So I believe it's Jeremiah chapter 7. I don't want to get too sidetracked here. It's going to wrap this up in a minute, but now immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, and the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers shall be shaken. Again, you're getting close to the end here when it's almost too late, and it's probably a good time to kind of stop it right here. So we'll pick it up in chapter 29. And then you got to be careful here. You get just a little bit back and forth, okay, of what's, events. Again, it's really impossible to kind of try and fit a timeline or not even or events that are happening outside of the four-dimensional world and try and squeeze them into the four-dimensional world that we are presently in. It's very difficult for John, the Apostle John, in Revelation and throughout the Bible, as it is here. And usually I like to limit myself to an hour, 45 minutes to an hour. People figure people are sick of listening, so let's, instead of going off, we'll cut it right here and pick it up at Matthew 29. Try to get on here every Tuesday and Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but those are the times. And we'll pick it back up with Matthew 24. Don't forget God's simple salvation plan. It's the most important thing to get out of this. Boxofsunglasses.com. Good night and God bless.